Thank you for joining our update today on flood and high stream warnings and watches in southern and central Alberta. With me today is Minister Jason Nixon and Lisa Jackson, Executive Director of the Emergency Management Branch at Environment and Parks. Minister Nixon and Lisa will provide a brief update on current conditions and the Alberta government's response. And then we'll open it up to media questions. I'll turn over to Minister Nixon.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. As you all know by now, a cold, low-pressure system started bringing widespread rainfall to southern Alberta. We expect to see continued heavy rainfall in areas before it tapers off on Wednesday. Yesterday, the City of Calgary declared a state of local emergency, and today the Municipal District of Bighorn issued a local state of emergency so that they can respond to possible flooding during this significant rainfall event in their communities. We support local municipalities in declaring a state of local emergency, and we are standing by supporting Alberta communities that are facing potential flooding impacts. Albertans who live in affected areas should look for updates from their local government regarding any potential evacuations and closures. Myself, along with Minister McIver and AEMA officials, remain in close contact with municipal leaders and organizations. Please follow directions, and if there is a need to evacuate some areas, cooperate with your local officials who are working to ensure everyone's safety. If you haven't done so already, please download the Alberta Rivers app for the latest information on river conditions, as well as the Alberta Emergency Alert app. Although municipal governments typically respond to flooding or other local emergencies, the Government of Alberta stands ready to assist with this response through the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. Municipalities can request flood mitigation equipment from provincial stockpiles through our Provincial Operations Centre. Government is at the ready, and as part of Budget 2022, we have a $1 billion contingency for municipal disasters and emergency assistance. I know that this is worrisome for many Albertans, especially for communities that were affected by the devastating 2013 floods. I want to reiterate that our cities and towns, particularly those impacted in 2013, have much better on-the-ground flood protection in place than was the case 9 years ago. Alberta's flood maps continue to be important over the next couple days as local emergency managers work to keep Albertans safe and prevent damage to our communities. We will continue to work together, as Albertans do through every emergency our province has ever faced. We're watching conditions closely, and today I'm once again joined by Lisa Jackson from Alberta Environment and Parks. Lisa will relay what our River Forecast Centre team is seeing right now and what their modelling suggests will take place over the next 24 hours. Lisa?
Thank you, Minister. So as was mentioned, a cold pressure system started bringing widespread rainfall to the province last night. So the system is expected to continue to push west into the foothills today and into tomorrow. And this creates what we call upslope conditions, which means those develop when the low pressure center rotates counterclockwise and pushes the moist air up along the topography. That just encourages the development of rain. So we continue to see and expect that heavy rainfall moving into Wednesday, when we expect it to taper off and turn more into showers. So there is a map that we have, and on the left-hand side we can see the total precip amounts that were accumulated over the up until 1 p.m. today, and it shows that how that worked out and when we were anticipating it. So since the morning of June 12th, widespread areas received up to 30 millimeters of rain, but heavier amounts were observed from areas west of Sundre, west of Calgary, and south to Pincher Creek. And the area of the heavier precip in rainfall, 60 to 80 millimeters, was observed, with locally higher amounts of up to 110 millimeters west of Calgary. Locally heavier rainfall amounts were possible due to the convective activities. We saw that upslope flow develop. Significant rainfall, and you can see on the map, is not expected in the northwest corner of the province and the Hay River Basin this week. So the rainfall locations and amounts have been variable, which meant the flood risk is uncertain. That's why I'm happy to provide this update and this data to you today so we can understand what that risk is and who is being impacted and which parts of the province are being impacted. So the Alberta River Forecast Centre Just before we move off this slide, I wanted to speak to the one on the right, which shows the amounts that we're expecting over the next 48 hours. And you can see that the higher amounts are where the red zones are on the map and where we're still expecting precip. So the River Forecast Centre is working with Environment and Climate Change Canada meteorologists to help understand and manage this weather forecast uncertainty. And we do update the forecast and the warnings and the advisories as the system progresses and as the rivers begin to respond to the precip amount and impacts are reported. So I'd actually like to cover a few areas specifically where we saw the flood risk change since we were last updating you. So in the Bow River Basin, the Bow River at Banff, Canmore, and Exshaw was downgraded to a high stream flow advisory. Tributaries to the Bow River upstream of Calgary were also downgraded to a high stream flow advisory. Rainfall amounts in the forecast for the upper Bow River Basin were reduced. The Elbow River, Highwood River, and Fish Creek were downgraded to a high stream flow advisory. And in the Red Deer River Basin, the flood warning for the Red Deer River mainstream upstream of Glenafar Reservoir was downgraded to a flood watch. A flood warning remains in place for the Little Red Deer River. There is a new flood watch advisory in place for Waterton Lake at Waterton Park. So you notice some warnings were downgraded earlier today as the River Forecast Centre was able to evaluate the response to the basins of the precipitation received overnight. It was helpful that we received snowfall at the higher elevations because this helps reduce the risk of flood peaks. The snowpack itself doesn't result in an increase in flood, but it is exacerbated by precipitation, especially if it melts the snow when it falls at those higher elevations. We also suspect that the dry conditions that we have been experiencing in southern Alberta over the last several weeks have played a role in absorbing some of the impact of the rainfall. So we do still have 24 to 48 hours of rainfall expected, and we need to get through that time frame. On this map, we're taking a look at a recent radar map that shows where the system is still rotating into the province, and you can see that it's accumulating and running up along the foothills. And I wanted to mention, just to follow up on the snowpack, I know I mentioned yesterday that we had above average, and we had pulled some numbers. You know, we are between 125 to about 200% of what we'd expect for normal. And just to reiterate that the flooding is primarily driven by heavy precip events, and the snow just helps encourage that or contributes to it. So just to echo what Minister Nixon had said, if you haven't done so already, download the Alberta Rivers app. So the most recent information is always located there, and the forecaster's comments. It's updated as soon as we understand what the situation is and we have new data, and that is the best place to get that information. And as well, Alberta Emergency Alert app is a very good one to have on the phone so that you can stay alerted to changing situations. Now happy to take questions.
Okay, we'll start here with questions in the room and then move to the phone lines. If you are dialing in, please press *1 to ask your question. For those in the room, please provide your name and media outlet before you ask your question. So we'll start.
Hi, it's Jeremy Thompson here with the CTV News Edmonton. Obviously, most of the concern here is with southern and central Alberta. Just wondering, you know, we're getting quite a bit of rain up here in Edmonton as well. Wondering what, if any, concern or preparations might be in place for sort of heavy rainfall in this region at all.
They're really watching the North Saskatchewan River Basin, and so the impacts of the rainfall haven't made their way into the river yet. So we're keeping a close watch on that and seeing when it will peak. So there is a high stream flow advisory in place for North Saskatchewan River, and if it's upgraded, it'll be on the app immediately just to let people know.
And just sort of, you know, what sort of impact could a rising North Saskatchewan River have in our city?
I might have to pull some of that information for you and just get back to you offline.
And then, Carla, do you have any questions? Okay, doesn't look like we have any questions on the phones. If you did have a question, plus *1, we'll just give it a second. And not seeing any. Did you have another question? Sure.
Yeah, so just another one for my Calgary colleagues. Just, you know, you sort of mentioned maybe sort of the percentage to which this is more than you would expect in a given year, sort of for this time. Do you have any sort of idea of how unusual an event like this is?
Yeah, like, of course, people's minds go to comparing to 2013, I think, or 2005, which were some other big event years. So comparison to, say, something like 2013, we were looking at 300 millimeters in the time frame that we're seeing 150, so about twice as much precip. So it is a heavy event. It's, you know, on the scale, it's not as high as that. And when we talked about 2005, in that year, we, of course, were hit with multiple events back to back, which gave amounts repeatedly over several days. So, you know, we're comparing it on that level. I hope that's helpful.
And just, you know, appreciating that there's still another 24, 48 hours to get through here, it sure does seem like we're sort of, you know, on our way out of this, on our way through this. Can you speak to that? You know, it seems like we're sort of trending good here.
Yeah, there is. So we are still looking, and when we looked at the precip amounts, for another, you know, 60 to 80 millimeters in the heavier place, but still tracking and trending for what we'd forecasted with maxes around 150. And tomorrow, I'd say today's the big day and overnight, and then tomorrow we're expecting to see it taper off.
Oh, cool. Yeah, looks like we have one on the line. Operator, can you put through the first caller, please?
Thank you, Adam Toy, Global. Yeah, I guess I'm wondering if we seem to be less concerned about this next 48 hours worth of precipitation. Is there any other systems on the horizon, so to speak, that you're keeping an eye on in terms of effects of what should be already high river levels and how that could impact the province?
Yeah, good question. We are looking down the road to see if there's any other low pressure centers or weather systems that would come in and impact, especially if we're carrying a heavier than normal stream flow. So that is definitely something preparing for. Get through the next 24 to 48 hours and then line up and see what else would be coming.
Did you have a follow-up?
No, thank you.
Okay. We'll go back to the floor.
Last one from me here. Just wondering if there, you know, we know about Calgary and Red Deer. Any specific, you know, towns or cities that should be sort of on the lookout and sort of on alert here?
Trying to think on the Rivers app. You know, we list, I'd say, an exhaustive list of every location, what amount. I didn't go through in that level of detail on the briefing today, but that information is all available in the app. And I really do encourage people to go on there and take a look for your location, your community, find out what the forecast is, and then if there's concerns, talk to your local community about the emergency management plans and what to do.
All right. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us today. Have a good day.